What's up, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Sports Now. We're doing the Colzer Report as of 4/29. I like to jump right into the content, so if you like that, hit the subscribe button. A lot of battles out there that we need to know about as we move forward with our fantasy seasons. First, though, we got to talk about graduates. These are the guys that I don't want to talk about anymore. They've solidified their role so well that I just don't need to talk about them anymore unless something comes up like an injury or a battle out of nowhere. Matt Bush hasn't pushed this Ian Kennedy at all, so for me, I'm done talking about Ian Kennedy because I think that he's got the spot, and I think they're going to continue to go to him, and there's confidence behind that. So done talking about Ian Kennedy for a little while unless something comes up. Clear leaders, these are guys that might be graduates coming up here because they really haven't done anything to lose their jobs. There's just a little tiny something about them that I don't want to just stop talking about them. Like Castillo has a bundle of blown saves here, a few earned runs. He's got 5 saves. He's looked really well. They haven't gone to anybody else yet, so he's obviously a clear leader. But the blown saves pulls me a little bit back from putting him into the graduate kind of category. Garcia has been absolutely dominant. There's no reason they will not go with him in the ninth. However, he's only been doing this for about a week or two, so I like to see a little bit more sample size before I just declare him a graduate and move him forward. So now let's move into the reason we're all here, which is the battles. So first, you got to start in Minnesota. Come out recently that Colome is basically not going to be the closer anymore. This is big news. Taylor Rogers is likely, they didn't come out and say that he is, but he is likely to take over that spot. So that is something that we got to keep in mind. I do think that he will take the spot, and I think that he will continue to use it and do well. I don't think Colome is coming back. Well, he's not hurt. I just don't think that he's pitched very well, and I think that Rogers has. And I don't think there's any reason to look back. So we'll see what happens here, but it is official that Colome is no longer going to be the closer and has been officially announced that he's not going to be that closer anymore. Moving on to Kansas City, an interesting one here. We got a bit of a battle actually brewing here. Greg Holland has done okay. He's given up runs. He hasn't really blown the games yet. I suspect that he hasn't really, you bring him in these tie games, he gives up some runs, and Kansas City comes back and he gets some wins, kind of thing. He hasn't technically blown a save yet, but they started going with Josh Staumont here, and he's like one of these gas throwers. He throws like 101 kind of thing, and he has looked brilliant. And they started going with him for some save opportunities. And it seems like if he can continue to do this and perform well, that he might skip Holland and he might continue to be the guy going forward. So in those leagues where you're a little bit desperate, you need a guy. Holland's probably owned. Well, Staumont might be a guy that you pick up here because, like I said, I don't think Holland is their long-term solution here. So keep an eye on this one. If not, pick him up. Might be worth it here. Got to talk about Cleveland. It's impossible to not talk about Cleveland. Emmanuel Clase seems to have the spot still, which is good. Karinchak has been absolutely lights out. Look at the strikeout numbers. I think what they say he's faced 34 batters and he's struck out 20 of them or something like that. Unfortunately for everybody like me who owned him and picked him and thought he would dominate, which he is dominating. Fortunately, he's dominating in like the 8th or the 7th. They're actually using him not as a closer, but as a high leverage guy. Wickren came into the picture, took the closer opportunities away from Karinchak to start, and that didn't really work out. As you can see, the ERA, a bit of earned runs there. But Clay seems to hold it down. He hasn't given up any earned. So that is good, and I think that he's going to continue to just take that spot. Karinchak's going to sprinkle in some saves here and there, and that's about it for me. Got to talk about the battle in Toronto. Dolis looked well. He had 2 saves this past week, the last couple days here actually, and he looked good in those opportunities. Romano is back. So that is going to be interesting. Dolis is no longer just the only guy there, which is going to be very interesting. I don't suspect at this point. I was a big Romano backer. I no longer think that they're just going to hand him the keys to the kingdom. I think that, honestly, if I was Toronto, I would go with Dolis first because he's shown that he can do this. Whereas Romano hasn't really been able to do that. He hasn't really been able to come in and say, like, hey, nope, locked it down. So for me, Dolis is probably going to get more opportunity first at this point. But it's hard to say. It's too hard to say for me. People probably have picked up Romano at this point. So again, if you're desperate enough, Dolis might be not a bad ad. Last week we talked about Montero and Graveman. It's kind of the tale of two. Well, I don't want to say it's the tale of two guys because Montero, you have 3 blown saves, but he's pitching really. He really is pitching well. 3 earned. That's nothing, you know. So he has pitched well, but he has blown saves. Managers tend to remember the games that you blew. Graveman has pitched exceptionally well, has not given up any earned run, 1 hit, in fact. So Graveman has been absolutely dominant. So to me, even though it looks like Montero is still getting like maybe 80-20 split, it seems like if it continues to go this way where Montero's blowing saves, that Graveman is going to slide in the 9th there. So I think that's something we got to keep an eye on. Moving on to Arizona, we can't not talk about Arizona. Soria is still on the DL. When he does come back, it seems obvious to me that he is going to get the spot. He is going to just jump right back in. Christian has done okay. I mean, he's held it down. He's one of these, like, hasn't pitched great, but is getting the job done. And now he's hurt as well. Chris Davinsky is still on this, like, mystery list. It's not a paternity list. It's like a personal issue. Hopefully everything's okay because this is like 2 weeks now of him being on this list. So he's out. Soria is out as of now. So the only reason I put Ginkel on here is because technically I think the only option they have right now is to go to him. So if you are like exceptionally desperate for saves, then you might add a speculative ad there. But Christian is probably going to come back here and take it until Soria's back, but I suspect Soria will be back very soon and just retake that spot. So if he's available, it might be worth the spot. Detroit, it hasn't really separated much, but it does seem like they're going to Gregory Soto more often in the 9th than Garcia at this point, which makes some sense, I suppose. They're pitching very similar. I mean, in every way, shape, or form, they're very similar. They're very interchangeable. But it does seem like the last savable opportunity for Detroit, Soto got the ball, and he locked it down. So that's all I can say about that. I'm avoiding Detroit like the plague, though. So Oakland. Oakland's been kind of a weird one. Last week, Dykman came in for 2 saves, and they used Trevino in more of like a Karen check where they wanted him in the 8th to get locked something down. There's a doubleheader, and they used Trevino in like the 6th to bridge the gap through like the heart of the order, and then they brought Dykman in to close the game. So not 100% sold that Trevino is the closer for sure, but it does seem that more often than not they're going to give Trevino the ball in the 9th than Dykman. Trevino has been a lot more dominant than Dykman has been, at least me watching. Obviously, Dykman's ERA here doesn't look that bad, but I just seem to remember when he almost gave up that dong to blow a save, and his numbers would look dramatically different. He'd have 3 more earned runs and a blown save. Would look a lot different had that ball been like an inch higher. So that's kind of what sticks in my mind, where Trevino, every time I watch, he just dominates. So I think Trevino's still the guy to have here. Even though it was Dykman's job to lose, and it seems like he has lost it. So that's our list, guys. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully everything's big enough to see this time, and we'll see you next time.